Everybody, and welcome back to another dev video. For this video, we are going to go ahead and start to convert some of the VoltzEngine content over to JSON. The reason for doing this is quite a few different reasons, actually. The first one, it makes maintaining the code much more simplistic. Right now, we have to build an enum, an item, and a block to maintain this object, and this code will change from version to version of Minecraft as we do things. We don't want to have to maintain that. We don't want to have to worry about it. We don't have to deal with it. The second thing is, if we want to go add more ores, it becomes much easier. We don't have to edit an entry in here. We can just go into a JSON file and add a new entry, add some new settings for it, control its behavior. Third thing is we can handle world generation much better. Right now, we have to manually call the registry set for the ore generation. We then have to build up our generators, register them, register the ore dictionary names. There's a lot of tasks that have to be done and maintained and kept working. This can all be automated via JSON and we won't have to deal with it. The reason after that, it becomes much easier to customize and disable the ores. You can disable ores individually, you can swap them around, you can change how they look, they behave. You can do all this via JSON. And somebody who's not a programmer doesn't have to be a programmer to do this. You would just open up a JSON file, edit it, you would create an override, which would be an external from the actual jar file, to change the settings. You won't have to deal with configs as often, although we are going to keep the configs for the people that need them. The option after that is configs. Configs become much easier to implement, as we now can just go, okay, we have this setting that we need to generate. We don't have to care about worrying about when it's called, when it's run. It'll be automatically handled for us. We can put translations in there. We can handle different behaviors. We can go, okay, there's ways to force enable the ores. There's ways to force disable the ores. There's ways to change the world generation behavior, everything else. So that's some of the reasons. I mean, there's even more beyond that I can probably think of. We'll get into even more reasons why we're doing the JSON system for things like various items. As you can tell, a lot of this stuff is deprecated in here, and the reason behind this is all of this stuff is going in JSON. Everything that ends up in the content folder is going away, with some exceptions, like the creeper. There's no way I'm doing that via JSON. Actually, even like something like a creeper, I could figure out a way to do this with JSON, and we'll magic this another day. I mean, some things in here probably won't go to JSON, but we'll get to that down the road. The focus of this episode is to take this block, completely ignore it, stop using it. Why are we even using a stepping sound piston? Like, there's so many different quirks about this block that just need to be fixed. We have to like manually keep track of our icons, keep track of some kind of type variable, which I'm going to say is our material type. This is actually something right here, is that we have a material type system for keeping track if a block is made of endstone, stone, netherrack, everything else. Instead of doing this, we could just make a new JSON file that then detailed all the same thing. We could even make a way to extend the previous JSON file and change 2 or 3 lines. That could be something we can implement, and we wouldn't have to do anything. Could completely get rid of the item block. The only reason this exists is so we can do unlocalized names. That's handled for us automatically, so that can go away. So first things first, when we go to do this, and I'm kind of trying to make this a tutorial at the same time while showing you what we're doing and keeping you guys updated on progress, everything else. First step, make a JSON file. We are doing this, you notice this is the core here, but we have to go do it in the implementation. The reason for this is that there's a weird quirk with how IntelliJ loads up textures and stuff and loads up files. So we put it down here in the implementation, because this is actually what launches the core. And there's actually a launch file down here, which is the mod loader. That actually is what runs everything. There will be an implementation per version down the road, but that's not the point of this. We've already got a folder for it. Been like, I don't know how many attempts I've tried to go and do this, and I always forget, or I get distracted, or something else. So we want to make a block entry. I'm actually getting to a point where I actually have this memorized. So we got an ID. Our ID is going to be our registry thing. We need a name for it, which we'll get to. We're going to need a material, which is going to be rock, because that's what it is. And that's the minimum you actually need. You can actually let's actually go pop the wiki up. For you guys who are working on this stuff, I am trying to work on the wiki. I want to see people use this JSON system, even though I know there are developers that hate the concept of people like me giving anybody the access to make mods. I believe as many people as possible should have access to make a mod. I believe you shouldn't be required to understand how to code to make something. So here's the block JSON processor. So oh yeah, we need the mod. So that'd be necessary. Because how this works is VoltzEngine itself will do a pass, and it'll go from each mod and it'll go, okay, hey, what content do you want to load? And it'll look at this content folder, it'll scan through it, and it'll load up all the content from here. It'll make the files, turn them into something. Then it'll do another pass and go, okay, who owns these files? And if you don't have a mod ID in here, it's not going to load, because there is a reason why I don't just automatically tag anything loading from this folder as a VoltzEngine item, as we might be registering items in different mods. Say, for example, we want to have some content for the Armory mod, but we don't want to store in the Armory mod. We can put it in here so that when you install Armory, we automatically generate the content for you. Say there was handling for Thaumcraft. We could go ahead and register items to Thaumcraft if we need to. Etc, etc, etc. Anyway, so VoltzEngine is a mod. We also need like an author tag up here too. Author tag is optional, but it really does help to know who in the hell made the piece of content. Eventually there'll be an in-game system where you can open up and you can go, okay, here's all these mods, here's the content they own, and there'd even be documentation tags in here and everything else. Translations. So let's go ahead and... Oh, this doesn't even have a name on it. That says Stone. So here's our registry name. And we could change this if we want to, but I'm going to leave it as is because, it doesn't matter. Wow, we don't set a name on this. We are going to need a setting for this so we can load up that. How settings are going to work is you put up an entry in here called load condition. I think it's called load condition. We'll check it in a bit. We're going to have to implement some code for this though, because right now load conditions I believe are string values, and we need something more complicated like... Well, actually, how are we going to do this? Actually, we'll do it this way. Setting at... what will be the name of this setting? What are we calling it right now? We'll call it content load ors. So do something like that. We'll have to create this entry for it, by the way, so we can't just like do this right away. This will do squat. And that looks good, because that'll trigger our load condition, and right underneath it we can just go ahead and like make a setting. I'll have to look at the documentation of this real quick, because I actually don't remember how this works. I just made this system like only a few days ago, and I haven't documented. I haven't spent a huge amount of time working with it. There is a couple blocks that have settings already, and that would be assembly line. Assembly line is the first mod I actually implemented settings in. So we want to do content, belt. Actually, we want the actual content folder, not the code folder for content. There we go, belt simple. So this has settings in here, and I believe they are actually implemented. No, they're actually not. So you can't actually load settings for blocks just yet. It's actually the reason why none of this probably works right now. But this is pretty much the setup for it, so let me go ahead and copy all this. So you would have some kind of key at which we would look up the settings, so our key is going to be this, content.load.ors. It's a boolean. Not that I think that matters. Its value by default is going to be true. Min-max doesn't exist for booleans. Booleans aren't even set up, by the way, so we're actually able to have a fun time with this. We want to make sure that our key actually matches. And yeah, so we make sure that exists. And we want to just go ahead and do this part. Now the thing is, like, if ors are required at some extent, you can't turn them on and off. We're going to change that. So instead of call this world generation, we'll call this world generation can be disabled. Allows disabling If set to true, ores will load, and false, we'll disable. Configuration. Yep, that'll work. Because that should generate a config for us. I think the setting system is not fully set up yet. So we will actually have to do a little bit of work to make this function. But we're going to go ahead and set it up first, and I'll do another video of me working. I'll probably just work on the setting thing. I don't know if I'll do a video. So we got that. So at least we know we need it. And that means we actually can go into our mod loading folder, which I popped open. And we can pretty much ignore this. There's like no point to be registering stuff here now. This does mean ores are now on by default, and you will have to turn them off. They're no longer request-based. I'm done with the request-based system. It existed for a reason, but what I'm finding is that nobody's working on it. No one's using it, pretty much. So I use it internally on my own mods, and my own mods will go to the engine and they'll just request everything, because I use almost everything short of things like tools and stuff. And it feels like a waste of time. Also, we need to go dig through another file here. I don't have the documentation process like fully set up, so like if you go in here, I have not added information on how to do subtypes here. So I've forgotten how to do subtypes again because I did not prepare for this episode. And we're going to dig through Jujo's mod. And the reason we're going to dig through that is because that's one of the few mods I've worked on that I have subtypes in. It is a messy file too. There's a lot of data you put in here, and it really doesn't matter how the data goes into these files either. Like, as long as you get the requirements in here, it understands how to read it. So we have subtypes, and our subtypes are going to have to actually match, and you'll set the meta here. I don't know if I've made the meta optional. I might have actually recently done that. Anything else we want to grab out of this while we're in here? Yeah, we need the hardness. Yeah, that's all we really need. Hardness and resistance. I'm actually going to go open up the block property file real quick. Okay, we can't open it from in here. We have to like put an entry in here so I can find it real quick. And what I'm looking really quickly for is make sure these keys match. That's hardness. This I'll update probably the wiki here later to make sure that these are actually on here. I believe when you go to set hardness, it auto sets resistance for you in the current version of Minecraft. But we're going to go ahead and add entries for it anyways, and that way we can make sure it matches how our blocks. So we got 10 resistance. And 1.5 hardness, which I believe is matching stone. I might add a system in here later where you can pretty much, instead of putting a number here, you can put a material in here or a block or some kind of name. That way it's a little easier to memorize. Anyways, remove this piece. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Do we need anything else in here? I'm not going to set the sound type. There's no handling for that, I don't think. We don't care about the blocks really. We'll go pull that from the system here later. We do want silk harvest. Now, is silk harvest an actual thing? No, it's not. Okay. That's odd. We'll make a thing for it. Private boolean can silk harvest equals false. I can't remember if it's a default or not to have that. So anyways, refractor, encapsulate filled. Do refractor, and then we go all the way down the bottom because we got to go fetch these and put these in their proper spot, which is above the settings handler. So we got a settings handler down here right now, which we'll add data to as we go. And what we want is something like this real quick. We don't have to tell it what type it is because booleans are auto-handled. Booleans and strings are like the only two that are really auto-handled. And this will be can silk harvest. So that way that data auto-injects. Come down here. And we go true. Now we get to the fun part, and that is going to be assigning all of this in here. So to make this easier mentally, we're gonna pop this out, pop this over here, drag it to one side, get this other side. Really easy to do it that way. And we're gonna start typing stuff in. So 10. The IDs aren't really gonna matter too much. So we actually could call these whatever we want. It doesn't do anything. The reason for that is the ID is really only used to reference the metadata value at this point, and it is actually not used for anything else. If we want to have something like word dictionary names, we are going to actually have to insert those ourselves, which we will do. We will calculate those. The good thing for us, the word dictionary names are almost entirely identical to how everything else is working. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll get this done in a few seconds. It's Nixel, bauxite. For people who don't know what bauxite is, it's aluminum. It's what aluminum is before you mine it. I'm actually not entirely sure I want to keep up with the habit of calling it that. I've started to realize that bauxite is actually a mix of a few materials. It even includes stuff like titanium in it. I probably should take some kind of metallurgy class, that more than an introduction on metallurgy. Actually, no, not metallurgy, geology? Yeah, geology sounds right. So that would be a good class to actually take here in the future after I get my degree, and I'll just take it for the hell of it. And that way I can get learned on what rocks actually are. Because the reality of it is, I can do as much research as I want and Google as much stuff as but I need solid knowledge. I need somebody to tell me what these rocks are and what they're made out of and where do you find them. Anyways, we have enough room for 6 more entries. That's good. And we need to do the ore names. So if I recall right, there should be something that has ore names in it. I think it's one of the items in here. Yes, it literally is just called that. Oh, there's a name for it too. So you can set the localization name and the ore name. So our localization name, let's go dig up our item here that was doing our localizations for us. Our localization name is, well, tile is going to be prefixed, so is the mod name. So right now our localization is ore and then capitalized first. This way we don't have to redo our localizations. I don't have to ask other people to redo our localizations for us too. It's one thing most people forget when you do, actually, hold on, sorry, this is our localization. When you do localizations and stuff is, how to best say it? You got to ask people to do things. This is pretty easy. Our localization is identical to our ORDIC name. So we just come down here, we just got to copy and paste this over and over again. For those who want to make your own mods, by the way, this is how easy it actually is to do it using VoltzEngine. If you want to make your own ore, so the ore 101 tutorials you've always seen, like all you have to do is do a data file. Make your own ores. VoltzEngine is actually getting to the point now where somebody can go around and make their own tech mod almost entirely off of JSON. Now, I don't have auto handling for things like recipes yet, but it's going to happen down the road eventually, is that I want to move as much of the logic as possible to JSON. I'm probably going to go overboard, but going overboard has its benefits, that I will be able to just port a mod very easily between Minecraft versions. As the blunt of the... because it'll get to a point where I will have made my own scripting language, which is what I should have started from the very beginning, is just made a scripting language that would run any type of system automatically for me. So this one's actually, I just about made a mistake with this. Bauxite's not actually called bauxite. It's actually called an aluminum. And this is mainly for compatibility between things. The name actually is still called bauxite, I think. Aluminum. Let me check the item again. So go over back. Actually, we don't want this guy. So language, get capitalization, metallic ores, values, item damage, name. Yep, it's name. So it's using these guys right there. When the name system works, is it's pretty much this. I don't know how Java does it. It's been a while since I've looked at it last. They have some magic voodoo in the background that does it for them. That makes it work, and we don't have to really pay attention. So this is magnesium. This will end up being used by the armory mod. We got uranium in here, of course, because, well, nuclear reactors were a thing. And, of course, you want to make be able to make bombs and stuff. I actually probably should go through the effort of making some dirty bombs for ICBM just so you have a use for the ore automatically. Because you can just toss like ore into an explosive and immediately you've got a radioactive thing. It wouldn't be very effective because, well, unless it's purified, you're not going to get any real radiation effects. You're just going to get a little bit, like make somebody sick maybe. Probably wouldn't even give them cancer. Not saying to go do that because you guys shouldn't do any of this in real life. But for a video game, it's kind of cool. So we got a subtypes, we got our dictionary names. Our dictionary names will auto-register for us so we don't have to mess with them. And we really just need our world generation value now. Before we go through the world generation, because I'm going to come through here and probably redo all this. Well, we might be able to set world gen. I'm going to have to go look up how the world gen code works. So let's go find it real quick. Framework, JSON. This would be something. There's a setting file down here. There probably is a system here somewhere. I might be looking in the wrong package for it. It might be down here. So I am trying to separate out some of the more Minecraft-based stuff, and it ends up down here. Yep, right there it is. Word processor data. Okay, so the format's a little fun. Let's scoot that over there because the only thing I need to see is those numbers. I probably need to know what the numbers are as well. So we got a type. And I think the type just tells me what kind of ore generator I'm using. Do I actually have any ore generators? I'm pretty sure I've tested this at one point because I don't make code without testing it. Anyways, here's the JSON key, so we'll go ahead and do this. And we'll go start putting it down here. Now, you are going to have to make one of these per block. There's no way around that, to be honest. You wouldn't want to make... you probably wouldn't want to do any fancy way of doing it either, because no matter how you look at it, it's about the same amount of work. Even if you use a for loop or something, it's the same work. Okay. Okay, that's JSON. So we have an ore name value in here. I don't know what we're using the ore name for. Ore name equals ore. Or block, so we have to actually set up the block here. Get this JSON primitive as a string. Or name, or block. And this is all being passed in as a string, isn't it? And then once it's passed in, it's initialized. I'm trying to figure out exactly how it's initialized here. We got a 2 stack here, which gives us a stack. And okay, this is actually going to handle our ore generating and setting for us automatically, which is kind of cool. So you won't have to mess with it. So we don't have to make an extra setting per ore, which is nice. But we are going to have to figure out exactly how we want to input this. So it's type, min, max, branch size, chunk limit. Really wish I had a mod I can actually put this in. So we got a type. We're going to want to do the block first, though. What's actually is called... It's just called block, which saves me a bit of brain power. And the block is going to be VoltzEngine. I believe we can actually do... I think it requires you actually do this in front of it. This is going to be... this thing right here. This does not have support for anything special, but I believe I can do an add at the end of this, and then I can do a 0. We'll have to check that. Theoretically, what I want to do is I want to be able to declare a certain way of methodology. I'm going to actually leave some notes here and go to do add support for JSON object. So this doesn't have support of the JSON object system. There's actually a system for it. So get or block, get or name. Is or name even used? That seems really strange that it actually requires the or name. At no point do I actually see this using the name. It could be used by the settings though. So this is used by the settings system. I'm just not seeing anything up here further up in the system that it's used by, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Because if it's not used, then we're kind of more or less wasting our time. So get rid of the name here. That way we reduce the amount of data required to generate this thing here. We get rid of that, and what we can then turn around and do with this is that we can call this key, maybe? Exclude comments. I don't know why this wants to change comments names, because, I mean, something like simple as that could be anything. I don't know why that's there. So capitalize first. So this would be 10. So 10 or. That's actually going to mess with things. We'll get to it though. Not what I wanted to click. I actually want to go to this guy, and I want to see what's calling that. And we got to go copy it out real quick. Get rid of that. Get rid of all of this, to be honest. Anything that's calling this no longer exists. I mean, it's going to produce errors, but errors exist for things. We don't have any special handler for that anymore. And we do need to do ingot recipes here. So furnace recipe is going to be something we need to do. I'm going to get rid of it though, because it's something I don't have to worry about. And I'm going to go ahead and fix this so we don't really care about our dictionary name anymore. Needs to be shut mod loader down, shut that off, shut that off. Wow, that's not even used. It's amazing. Got all this stuff that exists and you're just not actually implementing it. Let's go put this on the other screen real quick so I can actually sit here and stare at it while I type. So we need a type here, which I guess we didn't check. Oh, it's right there. So right now we only have one option, which is stone ore. So I'm guessing that would be you'd have different ore generator types, is what my original probably thought was. Then we need min y. I'll probably implement better settings in here later, like you can control like how the X even renders. So this would be, we're just gonna set these to 0 real quick. Min max y. This is case sensitive, by the way. That will change in the future. That is something I'm definitely going to fix. That is not a deficiency of VoltzEngine. That's just the lib we're using is the demands of that. And then chunk limit. We're just initializing all this to like a default value. Ore name's no longer going to be really used, so this has now become key. And what I'm gonna say, yeah, we're gonna have to require it. So we're just gonna leave it alone because we're not gonna change it, and there'll just be an understanding of what this actually means. So our first thing is just gonna be 10. That looks like everything. And here's our minimum stuff. So or name's not even required. I'm pretty sure it's gonna throw a fit if it's not in there. Strange. Or name equals nor. Ah, yeah, it ensures if it exists only if it's null. Same with the block, it ensures it exists if only it's null. Because this handles the block loading, which is doesn't even implement it. Should be an add override up here. There's not an add override. Yeah, you are a subprocessor. Oh, I see what's down here. It's your internal method. It actually handles it all. So shared processing call. That's good. So we got some limits on the min and max Y. You got to make sure you're within the world size. So let's go ahead and close this because there doesn't seem to be anything else I need to pay attention to. Now let's make sure it's a min, max, amount per branch, and chunk limit. So we just got to copy the numbers. 15, 120, 7, and then 40. Oh yes, I think it's the oil ore mod that... No, it doesn't do the system either. By the way, when you have multiple entries, you got to do something like that. You might as well do this anyways, just because it helps you keep track of what the number over here is. So copper ore is also 15, 127, and 60, so you get a little bit more copper ore. I probably need to balance this later. I'll probably increase it. This will be number 2. So silver. 15 to 60, so I probably base this off of gold. That's what it looks like. Silver is also not really used. It probably never will really be used for much more than maybe circuitry. I think it actually is used in one of the circuit recipes. There are other mods I've worked on though that do implement silver. So this is lead. Lead's the same way. Actually, you're going to probably see lead used a lot in circuitry. I'm probably going to make a little bit more realistic recipes, and it'll give a good use for lead, and it will also take a little bit of burden off of using copper for everything. A lot of mods use copper for wires and everything else, and having a lot of mods compete over resources, it makes it a little bit harder to play the game. So it's a really good idea to actually start using alternatives to everything. Zinc's going to end up be using for corrosive resistant parts. That one's going to make a little bit more sense down the road when I start implementing different features. Now I'm not going to have like rusting per se. There will be wear and tear on machines down the road, but it will be an optional feature. What I'm thinking of is like if we're building pipes or something, you're going to want to have like maybe stainless steel pipes or something, or galvanized pipes, I think is what it is. I think galvanized uses zinc. I'm not sure about that one though. I'll have to think about it. So zinc, this one's nickel. Once again, nickel is 1565.8. Nickel's going to be the same concept. You're going to end up using it in for recipes that just require a little bit more diverse parts and stuff. Theoretically, it's going to provide the same bonus when you think about it. Is that it's going to be less difficult to... Hold on, let's see. Zinc, nickel. Yeah, I thought I was messing up on the entry. See, the idea of implementing more resources, it does actually compensate itself. So you have more resources to mine, but at the same time you're using less of all other resources, and most people don't think of it that way. But it actually does matter. Like if you're using aluminum instead of iron for something, that actually does take a decent amount of weight out of your iron usage. And iron is probably one of the most #1 used materials because it's probably one of the most recognizable materials too. Like everybody knows things are made of like iron. Now, you can go down the street and probably find tons of things that are made of iron. Very few things are made out of other stuff. And usually the reason for them being made out of other stuff is usually like a tiering or gating requirement. I've got it thought through where it's like it's not a tiering requirement. We're thinking of it more as an alternative to the crafting chain. And I'll probably even build the recipes out that way too, is you can still use iron if you really care. I know for basic industries we actually do plan to spend a lot of time allowing you to craft the machines out of practically anything. If it's sturdy enough and it can be turned into a material that can hold the weight of the machine, then you can make it out of it. You'll have some consequences. Like if you use just raw wrought iron for a machine casing, if the machine starts to vibrate, your machine's going to start to break. Of course, that's going to be a difficulty option and not enabled by default. If you make it out of uranium rods, you're going to get some radiation poisoning, which wouldn't be a horrible thing for people, because there are mods that negate that. Like, say you were a zombie, for example, you wouldn't give any craps at all if you took radiation poisoning, because you're already dead. If you're a robot, you also wouldn't care because you're not affected by it. Although it is an illusion that robots are completely immune to radiation, as radiation can cause problems with electronics. Just double checking the settings. Maxonite. Okay, so rhenium 532.4, Magazite 510.36, 1560 510, 1560 5.8, 2040 520. Lead is really rare. Well, not that rare. You know what? I'm gonna raise that to 80. The reason I'm going to raise that to 80 is I want lead to be a little bit more early game, because you'll use it for batteries and stuff. I want copper and tin to be extremely early game. That's why they're at 120. You'll find them in clip sides. That's because you'll use this to make bronze. You use it to make bronze weapons. These were literally the two first metals that mankind found. After that, it was things like silver. Let me rephrase it. Not just found, learned how to do stuff with. Silver and gold were probably the easiest to manipulate. It's the reason why you see jewelry a lot. Then after that, people figured out how to smelt these two down, combine them into things like bronze, and then eventually somebody figured out how to smelt iron down, because iron is really hard to smelt down. Most people don't understand just how difficult some metals are actually to refine. Iron is really difficult. Anybody with half a brain can smelt down tin and copper. You just literally put them over a fire inside of like some kind of stone object to gather that heat and apply it to the material, and you can refine it and turn it into really crude versions of it. You figure out, like, get a little bit more intelligent about it, it'll turn into more and more pure materials. I actually do plan to reflect that eventually, although that's going to take on a whole thing by itself. But there's all our origin systems. We would implement recipes, but before we implement recipes, let's just go ahead and actually get our stuff running. For first things first, I'm going to nuke the old block. So get rid of these two, so that way all references to them are gone. Then I want to run a rebuild. And my brother graciously brought me food here. Or I'm kind of grateful that he brought me food. Words are confusing. I guess we can tab this back in here. Put this over here. So this is cleaning out the output directories. It takes a few minutes for it to build. But we're almost done. So it's not horrible. Like, this probably would have actually taken me a half an hour to do if it wasn't for the video, but it's okay. Yeah, we're gonna have an issue here. Get unlocalized name contains ore. We'll have to just rely on that method to work. Utility or puller. I'm going to put this method back. We're going to have to write some code for this later. We'll do that in another video to actually do the ore puller. But I got to temporarily fix it so that way it will still run. Okay, this needs to be pause. different naming conventions between each thing. What this will turn into is I'll have a method somewhere that'll be called is/or, and it'll be like is, and you put some kind of string. Actually, what it'll end up being is like is this string value, and that string value would be or. That way we can recycle the system goes is wood, is tree, is leaf. Probably actually use a data reference for that too, just to save a little bit of mentality. Enum maybe? I kind of want to use enums, but I'm trying to move away from using enums as well. That's one of the big things about using a JSON system, is I don't really have to care about an enum anymore, which is a really big problem. Back when I was doing chemicals and elements for a lot of these mods, that was a huge problem. We had enum upon enum upon enum, and it got out of hand. And eventually I stopped working on it simply because the amount of work you have to put forward for an enum to work sometimes just doesn't... it's not worth it. I can actually show this, since we have to wait on the compiler to finish anyways. So jlib, data, chemical elements. I have every chemical element in here. They're all here, except for maybe like 2 or 3 new ones they put on this list here last year or something. But look at all this. I have to like transition metals, non-gas, Halion, inert gas, what material type they are, what phase, actually what default phase they're in. I started working on heating data. Like, I don't even know if half this is even correct. But if I flip to a JSON format, I don't have to fill all the data in for starters. I can make a lot of the data optional. Like the default data that need to be there would be the name and this one. That's the only parts I really care about. After that, you start specifying like their weights and everything, and that's cool. You can then start specifying their material phases. I mean, if there's no material phase present, you could use an element, just it won't work. But something like a heating data would be something that'd be great to leave as optional, because there is a lot of stuff in here that I'm never going to use. But I built this out specifically because I wanted to have a complete list of all the elements. The reason why this actually even happened is I was hoping to bring one of the developers, I think it was Rushmead, who worked on Minecraft, into the fold of working for the BuiltBroken team. And I was trying to bait him in by going, hey, we're building up all this data. It didn't work, of course, but then again, I wasn't trying to do a solid pitch of it. I really wasn't caring at the time, and I kind of regret that, because I need more developers, and I always have needed more developers. And he was pretty good at what he did. Not the best developer in the world, but it's modding. You don't expect to have professional developers when you work with people. I would love to have a couple professional developers working for me, but I'll take what I get. I'm not what's the word? Picky. But yeah, that would have been really cool though. That was one of the reasons that was brought up, is so we could make our own version of Minecraft, basically. I liked kind of how the Minecraft mod worked, but at the same time I didn't. It was severely imbalanced in some regards. It was severely too costly in other regards. Like, I shouldn't have to dump a gigajoule of energy into a machine in order to produce an iron ingot. Even though the math produces out to that, it kind of ignores the amount of energy a chemical combination produces. So when you combine chemicals together, they can use their own energy to combine. The very heat of the object being created can also help combine more elements. It's what's called a reaction. A reaction chamber would be what we make. There's certain things that auto combine as well. Like if I put oxygen and hydrogen into a canister with each other, they'll combine. I don't know exactly how it works precisely. I think there's some heat involved as well. Some like the heat coming from the outside the container into the container will help them combine. And they'll release energy on when they're combined as well. That's part of the fusion process of them fusing. Well, no, that's not. That's not right. I'm completely on a different subject there. They're not fusing together, just combining. So the combination is being put together. It's kind of the process about making a hydrogen fuel cell, as you're putting hydrogen and oxygen back together. And they're using platinum as a catalyst. So you would need a catalyst, but the Minecraft mod didn't have a lot of catalysts, at least in the version I was playing. Failed to parse file, null point exception. I screwed up author tags. I forgot its name. I just flipped it to flat out name because it was getting confusing. Eventually I want to put mod here, so you'd have mod and name and name would be the author, the person who actually made the file. So if like the mod was VoltzEngine, but then I had Hinneman make a file, his name would go in the author tag. He made the file, it's his work. It's kind of how authorship works. Like if you go these things, like I have my name at the top of this, if somebody else made this file, their name would go up here. If we both co-worked on it, both of our names would go up there. There's a really weird thing about how credit works. A lot of developers kind of think like whoever made it first, their name goes up on the top. But I like to kind of put everybody's name up here as I can, unless they just bug fixed. If you made a bug fix, your name doesn't go up there. You get credit in the contribution list, but you didn't really do a lot of work, unless that bug fix was massive. I mean, we're talking like half the file rewritten, then it's a different story. That's a case per case thing, actually. We're getting off topic, and this video is already getting pretty long as it is. So get through this, and we'll get the ores done, so we'll get them where they load up in the game and work. And then I'll make a second half of this where I'll show you guys how to do the renders, because we still haven't done the rendering for this. That'll be a separate video, because I'll make a new file for that, because this file is getting pretty big. A way to, by the way, to help this is to do this. Click, click. Watch me collapse all these and then it crash here in a second, and it'll point right to this. You can do that with the subtypes too. I think there's a way to collapse all, actually. Is there a way to do this? I can collapse the whole file. That's not what I want to do though. I thought I figured it out there for a second. That's the reason what the gas was for. There's a check mark over here. What are you? It says there's a problem in the file. That's what that apparently is. I don't see anything in here. Oh, it's that right there. It's complaining about that problem. That must be spell check is what that means. Types. Look how small that file looks after you collapse everything. So we still have to set this up though. I don't really care too much about that. So work on that a bit. That'll probably be its own video though. I forgot translation names, so this is gonna not work at all. And we can't edit the file while I'm trying to load it, by the way, or it'll crash. That's the weird thing about JSON, the way I get them set up. So theoretically, the way I would actually probably want to handle this in the future is to load directly from the resource folders in game. That way I can edit these and reload them at any time. But that isn't going to work properly. Plus, I haven't finished coding the reload system anyways. So even if I wanted to do that, it wouldn't work. It'd be nice when it does get finished, because I mean, development process will go so much faster, because then I'll be able to save directly to the files when I'm editing them in game, and I'll be able to reload them externally, so I can edit them externally. I bet content developers would love that too, because having to relaunch the game every time you edit a JSON file, it's tedious. I agree. It's the reason why there's commands in game to change all the renders, so you can do all your rendering in game. And there's our furnace from earlier. So our ores are in here. We're gonna have to look for the other ones though. There's a sound emitter. We're gonna have to use an AI for this. At VoltzEngine. There they are. So we're just going to get numbers on this, but it does show that they're loading. We're not going to be able to do much with them right now, but we'll come back with a couple more videos here. So we'll do a video per task, so a video for the furnace recipes, a video for the settings, a video for the renders. I'll figure it out later, but I'll see you next time.